Brother Matthew was sacrificed in witchcraft by his brother, and when he died and became a wandering spirit, his premature death meant he could not go to the abode of the dead, thus he became a revenant at the service of his executioner. Upon his burial he became a phantom and slave, until he was taken to the world of goddess, siren and ladies of the sea, by a member of Lucifer global government the goddess Magdalene. Brother Matthew was subjected to scientific and esoteric training, in order to function like a soldier of Satan and fight the kingdom of light. This is Brother Matthew report excerpt. One day I was together with my colleagues in the submarine dimension and we were talking. One of my colleagues started to tell us how he missed his family that he has left on the earth. He said, "When I had died I left my wife and my children on earth, but I found out that my wife and children are suffering, so I feel obligated to do something for them, so as to relieve their suffering." Since we were revenant we had the capacity to operate in the unseen world as human spirit, and physically on the surface of the earth. Since my colleague wife and children suffered on earth, my colleague wrote a letter to his wife and he put money in the envelope, and then he went to the surface of the earth so as to drop off the envelope at the door of the house, where his wife and children were living. In the morning when his wife woke up, she found the wrap at the door. She opened it and she saw a package of US dollars and a letter. When she opened the letter she noticed her late husband's handwriting. She was amazed. Then she began to read the letter from her late husband, that says the following: "Honey, I am your husband. I know that you and the children are suffering. This is the reason why I sent you this money, so that you can take care of my children. Do not be afraid because I am not dead. I'm fine where I am. Take the money and take care of the children." This woman was afraid, so she took the envelope and went to her pastor. She told the pastor, "My late husband that died many years ago has sent me this letter and money, but I am afraid to use it." The pastor warned this woman that this money was dangerous, but he took it. Yet this pastor went to use the money for his own needs. In fact, he shared this money with other pastors and they used the money for their needs. These pastors did not know that we were watching everything in a huge screen in the marine world. My colleague was not happy to see these pastors enjoying his money. When he saw that his wife and children did not benefit from his money, he attacked these pastors and caused a traffic accident that killed these pastors. They all died in this car accident. In fact, I participated in this operation where we traveled to Earth to cause this traffic accident that killed these pastors. Later my friend traveled to Earth with an envelope and dropped it in front of the house door of his family. He had written to his wife another letter that says, "My dear, if you don't want to use my money, let my kids enjoy my money. Let me inform you that I am the one who killed these pastors who died in a traffic accident, because they spent my money on their needs." For a second time his wife took the envelope containing money notes to another pastor. When this pastor read the letter, especially the part where it talks about the death of pastors by accident, he was afraid. He didn't want to keep or even touch that money. The lady returned home with the money. She used the money to take care of the children and nothing bad happened to her. It became a habit for my colleague to drop the envelope of money for his wife and children each week. However, this meant that this woman could not get married because her husband who had died was caring for her. Those who tried to unite with this woman in marriage were dying. Chapter 1, Premature Death and Witchcraft. Human Sacrifice. The whole thing began when we had noticed that our uncle had become relatively rich in a short time. We attributed this to his business ability and skills, but it was not so, for he had resorted to the occult and black magic to excel in business. He wanted to become a great businessman, so he has looked for a shortcut using occultism. As a result, he was supposed to offer human beings as sacrifice to excel and prosper in his business. Back then we had a lot of servants and maids at home. He targeted one of them. Then a few days later one of our housekeeper fell seriously ill. My cousin wanted to sacrifice him to the devil for his business. When we noticed that his health was deteriorating despite receiving medical treatment, I suggested that he find some men of God for prayer. Once my cousin the Satanists has heard of my suggestion, he was irritated and began to insult me. I couldn't understand his attitude, but my cousin was already deep in occultism, and he knew the power of prayer. The Bible says that the fervent prayer of just has high efficiency. It's after visiting a church in the neighborhood that our servant was delivered and healed from the mystical illness, and our maid persevered in prayer in the presence of God. When he had become out of reach, my cousin the Satanist realized that he had lost his prey, so he decided to sacrifice me in the place of our servant. Since I am the one who suggested to our servant to go to church, I therefore became the prey to be sacrificed to the devil. I was still a student going to school when I began to dream about people putting in coffin by force. I dreamed about death, but I continued to live my life normally. I did not know that there was conspiracy to kill me and offer me as a sacrifice to the kingdom of darkness. I went with my friend to bath in the river. While we were bathing, I saw a boat coming with speed, but the people inside were telling me to get on the boat. But the strange thing is that they were naked and seems grotesque and very terrifying. They were witches. I went out of the river with my underwear. In the city people thought I was crazy. I explained to them what I saw. They were amazed, but they did not know what to make of that. It was my cousin that was after my soul. I was still a student and on that day was in the classroom and we were about to do the exam. But the prefect entered the classroom and said anyone with school fee arrears will not take part of the exam. I had to leave because I owed the school $5. I did have $5, but I thought I should go home to bother my parents so that I can use my $5 for something else. On my way home I met my cousin the witch, who asked me, "Why are you going back home?" I explained to him about the school fee situation. Quickly he gave me the money I needed to pay the school fee. Unfortunately my cousin gave me the money he had bewitched as a tool of destruction. He gave me $5, but this money was cursed. In fact, my cousin had bought my soul with that money that was bewitched. After receiving money from him my problem began. I got sick and was taken to hospital for eye migraine. Days later I was diagnosed with appendix. After that I was again diagnosed with hernia. Then I was operated, but they could not find the sickness in my body and my situation was deteriorating. When I realized the medical science was failing, the doctors could not diagnose the disease that tormented me since it was of mystical origin. I remember from the day my cousin gave me the money, I have started having strange dreams, where I saw people putting me in the coffins, and I kept dreaming cemeteries. Later I saw in my dreams grotesque people laughing at me. They told me, "You are going to die, Matthew. You are finished." I was transported from one hospital to another. At some point I said, as modern medicine cannot do anything for me, I must resort to prayer. My family transported me to church, where I saw the effectiveness of prayer because my health had improved. The pastor did a series of prayer. As a result I recovered and got well. At this stage no one in the family knew the origin of this sickness. I did not know that my sick was coming from my cousin. His mission to destroy me was failing as long as I was living with that pastor. I stay under supervision of men of God, but when my cousin the sorcerer has learned that I was transferred to church he became uncomfortable. He sent demonic spirits to manipulate my family. As a result my family came to take me from church because they were influenced by demon. The next day the illness returned. It was worse than before. I was therefore transported to university clinic, but the doctors were amazed when they saw my condition that deteriorated despite their efforts. Even my parents spent all their money for nothing. Few hours later I saw my spirit going out of my body. I went like in coma. Still I could hear the doctor telling my family that there was no hope for the boy. We did what we could. Later I heard the doctor telling my family Matthew is dead, but the surprising thing is that I could hear everything the doctor was saying. I heard the noises of pain and desperation from my family, even their cries, shouting in the hospital. I could see my uncle entering the hospital to negotiate the removal of my body. He took my body and organized the burial ceremony in his house. Everything happening in that burial I could see and hear. Then the burial day arrived. I was taken to the cemetery. They put the coffin in the hole. People did the last prayer. Because my spirit was put on my leg I could see inside from the tomb hole how they were burying the coffin. When they covered the tomb hole I could not see anymore. It was absolute darkness and it was hot down there. All the family left the cemetery and the burial was over. I was left there alone. Chapter 2: The Astral World of Witches and Slaves. Transaction. My soul was in the coffin. It was dark and hot. When it was late in the night, I heard a craze of people on the surface. These people introduced a stick that penetrated the ground and entered my coffin. I heard someone calling my name for 3 times. As a result, the unthinkable happened. My corpse was raised out of the coffin in a mysterious way and iron-daced on the surface. These wizards returned my spirit in my body and I recovered my conscience. I came back to life and I was free from this mystical disease that killed me. When I stood on my feet, quickly I saw a number of people dressed in black short and they were in a line. These souls were under the control of wizards who were their executioners. That's when I noticed the presence of my cousin among these witches that have killed me. When I saw my cousin among these wizards I tried to seek answer, for the whole thing was unreal, like a film. Instead of sympathy from my cousin, I was tormented seriously and I was instructed to keep silent. Brother, you should never die in the hands of a wizard. Victims of witchcraft death are tortured in an intense and excruciating way. In fact, you will spend the rest of the years of your life in torture because you will be a slave. My cousin was cold-blooded and merciless towards me. Anyway, when your brother become a witch he will cease to be member of your family, and would consider you and the whole family kettles liable to be butchered any moment. My cousin's attitude was like he never knew me. According to witchcraft rules I was no longer his brother but a civilian and a cattle. When witches are in operational mode at night, they are deprived of empathy and compassion. After going through torment I was instructed to join the people dressed in black. As soon as I joined those souls that were killed in witchcraft death, instantly we changed location. As soon as we left the cemetery we landed in the astral world of witches, in the headquarters of slaves transaction, where victim of witchcraft come. The victim will consider merchandise and slave that will be sold. In this dimension where I became a slave my memory was lobotomized. I found in this wizard world a crowd of souls that had died as a result of witchcraft. These victims were slaves. They were deprived of their identity. This place was truly a slave market, where wizards and Satanists sold and bought souls of men and women. All these slaves were dressed in black short and they had bare chest. Souls of men were identified not by their names but by the specific number on their short, for they lost their identity. These slaves were gathered in groups in relation to the physical strength. They were ready to be sold for hard labor. I noticed that when I had put on this black short something happens to me. My humanity was captured. I lost consciousness of the world of men. My memory was like lobotomized. I no longer knew who I was and where I come from. Few days later we were still there in the slaves market when an order for 4 slaves was placed by a satanic entrepreneur on the earth seeking labor force. He wanted slave to work for him. 4 slaves were to go back to work on the earth. I was among the 4 slaves that were sold to the businessman in order to work for him. Many slaves were complaining because they have been in slave market longer than me. They should have been sent to work, and I and the 3 slaves were taken to the world of men. When we arrived on earth, I was amazed to see that we were in the eastern province. I remember the city because Daddy often brought me here, where there are many commercial activities. My father often took me to this city for the purchase of many articles. I was hundreds of kilometers away from my city. A slave can be sold in Europe or Asia. There is a slave trade in the spirit world of witchcraft where the dead are sold and sent back to earth with a new identity. Beloved, I want to start by explaining the mystery of death. There is natural death and premature death that is untimely death. We are talking about natural death when a human being dies after having exhausted the number of years set for him by God. The Lord was fixed a number of years for every man on earth. However, premature death are perpetrated by Satanists. Many are men and women who have their lives interrupted prematurely without reaching the number of years allocated for them by the Lord. Indeed, Lucifer is always looking for human spirit in order to use them like demons. In fact, many evil spirits who are at war with Christians and mankind are human spirits. I mean human beings who died before their time. They cannot go to the abode of the dead. They become wandering spirit. They are integrated into the evil army of Lucifer. They are officially dead but they are still operational on the surface of the land. We are at war with the world of spirits, demonic and human spirits. Satanists constantly offer human sacrifice to the devil. The souls of the victims are taken to the kingdom of the devil at the service of Lucifer, until that they reach the number of years set by God for them. This is exactly what happened to me. I died prematurely as a victim of human sacrifice. It is when my relative gave me money that I fell sick, and I died, for he bought my soul with his money. Chapter 3 My Life as a Revenant. Once we arrived on the human world, each one of us was assigned to a store. We had to sell goods and manage these stores. I found workers in my store. They did not know that I came from the spirit world of wizards and was a revenant. I was dead and officially buried. However, I continue life on the land far away from my city. I was to receive goods from the world of Satan for sale, and return the money every Saturday. While I sold in this store, I was still bare chest and in black short, but workers and customers did not perceive me that way. Their natural vision and optical eyes only picked up the false appearance that I had adopted, and they saw me as a normal man well dressed. In reality, I was still in my short and bare chest. Only those who were advanced in occultism that could identify me as a ghost and see my true nature. Every day after the sale, my 3 colleagues and I were going to spend the night in nightclubs, bars and hotels, for we had no homes on earth. We were revenant. When we went to bar and hotels, we slept with women. Sometimes I took women home. In reality, we had no home. We slept in the cemetery, but the perception and optical view of these women were manipulated as they perceived the grave and the tombstones as houses. Often when these women woke up in the morning, they realized that they slept in the cemetery above tombstones. Their lives were destroyed. Since I could assume various identities on earth, I went on to become a fiancé of a girl. I was indeed a demon. I remember having financed a girl who got attached to me because of the money. She thought she was dealing with a businessman. She could not know that I was a dead man, but this girl ends up disappearing from the face of the earth, and she was taken up to the world of Satan. I deeply regret her disappearance, and I am sorry for her family that will not see her again, not even his corpse. May the Lord forgive me. When I was still a revenant far from my family, one day I saw my father, but he couldn't see me because I was invisible in this boat where he was traveling. But I was just at his side because I wanted to see him, and I was happy. I was able to be invisible and disappear, for I operated as an invisible spirit. I would like to point out that anyone that has been subjected to rituals, customs and traditions has the door of his life wide opened, and since we were revenant, these open doors in people's life caught our attention, for we were attacking only those who have opened doors of their lives. Brethren, learn to close the door of your life. I was truly a human spirit. I could come to your house and steal your money even if you hid it. Every time I gave someone money, I captured his chances, his wealth and his star. In life, you must not accept the money from the person you don't know. He can buy your life with that money. So I lived 6 months on the surface of the earth, in the conflict and war that opposes the kingdom of light to that of darkness. The devil needs human spirit to enroll them in his army, thus he kill people prematurely and enroll them in his army. Given that these victims have died prematurely, they can't go to the abode of the dead until they will reach the numbers of years predetermined by God for them. My death was not natural because my life was cut short and interrupted by the sons of Satan. Many are dying prematurely and they are taken into the world of Satan, where they are slaves doing hard labor. Others are displaced geographically far from their region and countries, where they work as slaves in the fields, until they reach the numbers of the years of their life. Thus I was dead and officially buried, but I was working as a servant, hundreds of kilometers from my region. We have to understand that there is a slavery industry in the astral world of wizards. Men and women are killed on earth and are sold like slaves. In fact, there are markets and transactions, places for sale of souls of men in the world of witches and wizards, where witch doctors and Satanists sell and buy souls, victims of human sacrifice. I saw a crowd of people sold and bought in these slave markets. These people are officially dead on earth, but they have become revenant. I remember when I was selling in this store, one day my former teacher came to buy stuff in my store. He couldn't recognize me because I had assumed another appearance and identity. I could recognize him. While he was shopping, I asked my workers to give him some household appliances as a gift. He was astonished and suspicious. He could not accept and understand all this. He tells me, "Sir, I don't know you, but how can you give me all these items for free?" Finally I decided to reveal my identity to him, and when he saw my face he was terrified and screamed my name. He said, "Matthew, You are already dead." He was so terrified that he ran away. He even abandoned the stuff he came to buy. Afterwards he went to inform my family about what he saw. There was confusion in the family. Revenant assume appearances and identity depending on the place where they are deployed. If they are sent to work in the field in Europe, they will assume the appearance of white people and they will be seen as white by optical eye. My clients could not imagine that I was a ghost from the unseen world. Many are corporations and companies that belongs to the kingdom of darkness. The bosses and leaders are not necessarily ordinary men. One day while I worked in this store I saw a phone and a particular number. It was actually my cousin's store number, the one who have killed me in sacrifice. When I called this number he was absent, but I talked to his little sister who was present. I said, "Julia, I'm your brother Matthew." She replied, "No, you are not, for Matthew is already dead." But gradually, as I insisted, she fell into coma due to panic, and she was transported to the hospital. And when she came out of the coma she told the family what had happened. People did not know what to make of this. Already my teacher told them the same story. Few months ago I called the same number again. Julian received me on the phone. She was overwhelmed by events. I told her, "Julia, go home and tell my parents to send me clothes because I'm here bare chest and half naked." Julia was so terrified that she cut off the phone. When my cousin heard about this, the world of witches delegated someone who took my phone and warned me not to use the phone again. Not all humans in the street are ordinary men. I was already functioning as a human spirit in the service of the kingdom of Lucifer. Chapter 3: The Mystery of the Underwater World. One day when I was going about my business as usual, I received the visit of a princess of the world of Lucifer, called Madame Magdalene, also called Princess Jacqueline. She had come to the surface of the earth to inspect industries and companies around the world that belong to the kingdom of darkness in the area. She inspected my store in few seconds because she is a marine spirit that works in the speed of light. She offered to employ me as one of her servant, and she recommended me to join her in the world that is under the sea where she lives. She told me, "Your work here on the earth is over. From now on you gonna work as my guard." The next day this princess came with a person who was to replace me. When the day I had to join the princess in the underwater kingdom came, we were in our group of 4. We were all serving spirits. We went to the bank of the Congo River. The princess had explained to us the ritual to do in order to open the interdimensional portal leading to the realm of the spirit underwater. The princess handed us a New Testament, a scent, a black candle. She gave us a Bible verse that we were supposed to recite during the ritual. She instructed us to put perfume on our eyes. We were around the bank of the river when we did ritual and magic prayer. As a result, the river opened like the Red Sea in front of the children of Israel. We then saw a golden and crystalline boulevard emerged in the middle of the river, and this boulevard reached the bank of the river. The shining boulevard went straight into the universe that is underwater. As soon as we stepped on the boulevard, we saw a magical and mysterious world in front of us that we have never seen since we were born on Earth. It was an urban and sophisticated civilization, another universe. To tell the truth, there is no city on Earth that can equal this civilization underwater. We saw a huge advanced construction and architecture. The level of technology and sophistication of this prehistoric world is far ahead of human civilization. When we arrived in this metropolitan world, we saw the Princess Magdalene, who was waiting for us, received us with enthusiasm, and then she took us to her palace. Once we arrived at her place, she introduced us to her staff and workers. When we started new life in this mysterious world of Lucifer, I started to see the elites who rule the world. I saw the royal families, the aristocrats, the upper class, and the people we see in television. I was shocked to see all the famous people we watch on television. I saw them all in the submarines kingdom of Lucifer, where they regularly attend Lucifer meetings. This was a kingdom ruled by the world government of Lucifer. 2 Congolese are in this government, one is a pastor and another is a musician. In this government of Satan there is those who sit on the left hand of Lucifer and those who sit in his right hand. In truth, Satan's secretaries are fallen angels, not humans. He was betrayed and exposed by many former Satanists who came in Christ, so he no longer has confidence in men, and the Princess of Love that invited us in this world was a member of the government of Satan. It was thanks to her that we were able to see Lucifer. Access to the throne of Lucifer is not given to everyone. He is God in the marine world. The strategic goal of the satanic world is the destruction of men, hence the need for Parliament. Who's behind the strategy of destruction of humanity? I would like to remind you that I went to live in the world of Lucifer with my physical body and not with my soul. In this magical world houses are built with spoken word. They speak specific feature and structure of the house. In the world underwater there is a government and a parliament debating and determining how to destroy humanity. Since we started a new life in this unknown world, the Princess of Love settled us in respective houses. She came to get us whenever she needed us. Afterwards she instructed us to get married ladies before serving her. She offered us women that were divas of the sea, and we got married in great celebration. I had 4 children with my new wife in this unknown world that I have left behind in the kingdom of waters. Children from marriage between men and ladies of the sea are humanoid hybrid demon. They are not always immortal. They are often sent on the surface of the earth with specific missions, where they look so much like ordinary men, it is difficult to detect them. They manage corporations and large companies. The Bible says that what happens in the time of Noah will happen in the same way in the advent of the Son of Man, when men had started to multiply on the face of the earth. The underwater world is filled with hybrids, demon from the union of man with ladies of the sea. There are different kingdoms. There are cities and metropolitan agglomerations with dense populations under the sea, the rivers and the oceans. There are people living a life which is not too different from our life. These cities and towns are underwater, are physical civilizations with infrastructures. For people who live there, go to work, they get married and gives birth to children. They have boulevards and cars. They have bars and restaurants. Chapter 4: Scientific and Mysterious Knowledge. Immediately after our wedding, the Princess of Love ordered that we undergo training in different disciplines, in preparation of our deployment on the surface of the earth in different mission. Our training was in scientific and magical knowledge. In terms of scientific training, I learned to drive a car, although I have never owned a car during my life on Earth. Cars in the submarine world are more advanced than in the world of men. Scholars from the world that travel to the submarine world tried to copy this technology, for underwater cars are equipped with computers that offered options. I mean, when you press the kitchen button, the interior of the car is transformed in the kitchen. When you press the bathroom button, the interior of the car turns into bathroom. We must understand that the great scientists of the world are Satanists, that travel to the world of Satan for transfer of technology which they are supposed to bring to the surface of the earth. The mysterious world of the devil has several metropolis. It's a computerized world. The rapid technological advancement that we recorded on Earth in the last centuries is thanks to the world of Satan. Thus we were put in different training programs in order to be prepared for the different mission we were to conduct on the Earth. After training related to scientific knowledge, we were trained in esoteric knowledge. In terms of scientific knowledge, I learned to drive a car, a train, a boat, a bicycle, and I did a lot of sports disciplines under the sea, and I also learned music and the use of musical instruments. We were also trained to walk with leaders. We were taught how to speak in public. In terms of esoteric and mystical knowledge, we learned different techniques in order to function like demonic spirits. We learned to cause mystical death to human. We learned all the destruction techniques. We learned the law of nature. We learned to operate like evil spirits in 2 worlds. We learned to disappear and to become invisible. We learned to enter the body of men and women to dwell in them, in order to possess them and influence them like demon. We have finally learned to capture souls of humans. It was made known to us that our targets were Christians. There is a perpetual war between the kingdom of Satan and that of light. We were to cause destruction, even traffic accidents, sickness and evil. The fisherman. One day we were on the road in the marine civilization, then a fisherman finds himself in the submarine world. The goddess was moving on the boulevard accompanied with security. She is a member of the world government of Satan. We were moving into a district of the marine civilization and we saw that there was a lot of noise. People did not know that the goddess was in the neighborhood. When the goddess arrived in this place, she was informed that a fisherman landed illegally in the kingdom. Actually, this fisherman was doing a dive to try to withdraw his net when he landed in this mysterious world beneath the water. He could not understand where he was. He was naked and in confusion. People were harassing him. People told him, "We cannot be quiet because of fishing and your nets." The goddess looked at this fisherman who trembled with fear and wonder. She told him, "Sir, I do not want to kill you, but you will not talk about our world to people there on the surface." It is when this man was on the point to be brought to the surface of the earth that the princess told him, "I feel that you will not shut up." Then she blew air on this fisherman. As a result, he lost his speech and became dumb. Finally he was taken away to the surface. Let me tell you that the way people see planes flying in space, that's the same way the inhabitants of the marine world sees boats navigating over the water. When I arrived to the marine world, after getting married to a woman of the sea, after studying in university scientific knowledge, I went on to study and acquire mystical knowledge, where I learned different techniques to kill humans. This training was imperative to operate like demons. The strategic goal of the kingdom of Lucifer is the destruction of humanity, so we learned all the techniques of destruction and mystery of laws of nature, to operate as evil spirits in the two worlds. Our targets were Christians. They are the opponent of Lucifer. There is a thousands of year battle, an invisible and perpetual war between the realm of Satan and that of the light. I was taught to cause destruction and traffic accidents. Once our training programs were over, it was time to be deployed on the face of the earth, as part of the spiritual war against Christians and humanity. Chapter 5, Battle Against the Church. Our first mission was to destroy a man of God, who was previously a Satanist. He was delivered from the works of darkness by Jesus Christ, and he was financially blessed by his Lord. This man went from one church to another to denounce and expose the secret of the devil, and the mandate was to kill him. But before any operation on the earth against the Christians, the goddess Jacqueline projected direct images of the targeted person. These images showed the person we were supposed to neutralize, and the very place where he was and what he was doing. People living on the earth are being filmed by Satan's surveillance, monitoring and intelligence system. We were in a meeting. The goddess Magdalene pointed her finger at the wall of the building. As a result, a giant screen appeared and direct images of the targeted pastor were projected into this giant screen. In order to begin this operation against this pastor, we had to identify open door and find a sin in his life. But this man had closed all the doors of his life, for after scanning him there was found no bitterness, no unforgiveness and no anger in him. We looked for something in his life that belonged to the devil, but he feared God in his life. The Bible said, "I will hardly speak with you anymore because the prince of the world comes, but he has nothing in me that belong to him." Brethren, it is necessary to keep the enemy properties out of your life when you go to war against him. The sinful life that many are maintaining is a property of the devil. Finally, we decided to act against this man of God, although we did not find a gateway. So we traveled in spirit and we landed in his house. We saw him sleeping with his wife on their bed, so we went to his room where they were sleeping. They were just a few meters in front of us. When it was time to destroy him, we began to do incantation prayers in order to capture the spirit of this pastor and transport him to the world of Satan underwater. Every time we capture a soul on the earth, he was transported to the world of Satan, and there was a big celebration where we were supposed to be rewarded and receive the presents. So we were in that pastor's room doing invocation prayer in order to capture his soul, when suddenly something happened. A resplendent man dressed in bright white appeared. He was a being of light. He gave me the impression that he did not heed our presence and he was silent. He ignored us as if we were not there, and went to the bed where the pastor and his wife were asleep, and he covered the preacher and his wife with a sheet that came out of his fingers, and as a result they became invisible, including their beds and their mattresses. Then this being of light disappeared. We were amazed and in the confusion. All the stuff in the room was there, but the bed including the pastor and his wife who slept there were gone. So we alerted the goddess. She gave us encouragement and assurances. She told us to fear nothing and continued to invoke Lucifer, and she assured us that there is no power in the universe that can harm us. At some point while we were in the pastor room, I felt that I had to get out of the room and wait outside. My colleagues were still in the room of this man of God invoking Lucifer. As they were praying, the pastor and his wife were reappearing and disappearing again and again. As my friends continued to pray to Lucifer, suddenly the resplendent character of light reappeared. He was hanging in space. It is when this guardian angel of the man of God pointed his hand to my colleagues, that I heard like the sound of a very loud detonation. It was like a strong explosion of a bomb. My colleagues who were in this room were struck down by the angel of the Lord. When I heard this explosion, I found that 2 of my colleagues had died on the spot. Another colleague was burned severely, but the third received a shock because his leg was cut. I was the only one not to have received a shock and an injury. The Bible says that the angel of the Lord encamp around those that fear him. This was our first mission. When we returned to the pandemonium, I told the goddess, I do not want to go on these missions on the earth because it is dangerous. I would love to take care of my wife and children, but she gave me encouragement and advice, and later my wife, who was also a water lady, advised me to continue the fight and the war against the Christians because there was a lot of rewards. Man is spirit, he has a soul but he lives in a body. Later the mermaid Magdalene sent me to the earth with the mission of drowning a ship in the river. There were many people in this boat. I was trained and filled with demonic force, so I seized this ship and I pulled it by my hand with speed. The captain of this ship had lost control of the boat and I finally drowned this ship that was shipwrecked. There were many deaths. Our second mission was to destroy a Christian lady, but after several attempts we finally decided to remove his heart from the presence of God. The tactic adopted to get there was to influence the behavior of his son, up to a point where she will be offended, and will lose faith in God. I told you that during our training in esoteric knowledge that we were taught to enter the body of a person, to dwell inside people's body in order to influence them. So one of my colleagues decided to enter the body of this lady's son, in order to handle and control his behavior. My colleague entered the body of the child through the fingers and settled inside his body, and he began to influence the behavior of this child. The latter began to steal, fight and cause all kinds of trouble affecting his mother. His mother did not want to accept the negative report she received on her son, but later her son's behavior became apparent and she was overwhelmed by the delinquency of her son. The problem is that the lady did not show discernment. Everybody knew that her son was docile and well educated, but there was a sudden change in his attitude because of manipulation. But the young lady did not understand that the change of behavior of her son was due to the influence of evil spirits. Basically all that the lady had to do was to exercise authority, for the Lord said, Behold, I give unto you power to tread on serpents and scorpions, and over all the power of the enemy, and nothing shall by any means hurt you. And these signs shall follow them that believe, in my name shall they cast out devils. The lady dealt with this situation in the flesh, failing to take authority over the forces that were influencing his son. The Bible says, I tell you in truth, everything you bind on earth will be bound in the sky. Since the lady proceeded by the flesh and she was offended by her son's behavior, she began to mistreat her son, and since his son did not change, the lady began to murmur against God and she was offended. These murmuring and offense were the doorway through which we managed to enter in her life and destroy her. It was then that we were able to capture her soul and she died, and we were able to transport his spirit in the pandemonium world of Satan. Of course, she continued her life on earth, but spiritually she was already dead. We later decided the type of death she was to die, and she finally died many days later. Many are already dead even if the body moves. It is only prayer that can reverse their death. After the death of this woman we were rewarded with gifts and cars and a lot of goods by the Queen Magdalene. One day the goddess gave us a box containing blood contaminated with AIDS. She had given us a syringe and we were supposed to go on the earth in public places in order to inject people these contaminated blood. Many are diseases having origins in the mystic. Only prayer in the name of Jesus Christ that will make a difference. I remember we were sent to destroy a Christian family by the goddess. When we had landed at night in the plot of this family, we noticed that the whole family was asleep. We were trying to determine how to destroy this family, but something unpredictable happened. In a fraction of a second the plot of this family has turned into a massive river. that sank with a strong pressure, and this river was flowing into a massive waterfall. The residents of this family became a river throwing itself into a waterfall. In this situation, if you do not know how to swim, you're going to die. And as we were a group of several people, some of us died because of the pressure of the fall of this river. I give thanks to God because I was fisherman. That's the kind of things that happened to us when we were deployed against the Christians. When we returned to the underwater world, the goddess was developing a new strategy. She tells us instead of attacking the whole family, we are going to attack members of this family individually. So we selected the first target. The mermaid informed us that the new tactics is called sudden death. We should hit the target by the head with a stick. The mermaid made a sign with his hands. As a result, a giant screen appeared, and we saw the targeted person on the earth as he was walking in the street. So we traveled to Earth precisely in the street where our target was walking, and we began to walk after him. He could not see us because we were invisible. But then a man of light appeared behind him. He was blocking the passage. He was standing between us and our target, and when we stopped in the street, the being of light disappeared. But every time we got closer to our target, the being of light reappeared to bar us the road. But at some point we noticed that the being of light that was the guardian angel of this man did not appear anymore. Then we decided to finish this man. One of us was supposed to take the command and kill this man, but there was fear in our midst. Our target seemed to be without protection, because the man of light no longer manifested. The manifestation of this fiery entity of light was a signal that something was going to happen. I was careful because I felt in my spirit that something violent was going to happen. So I backed off, but my friends were before me. Finally a colleague took the responsibility to execute our target. But first we prayed for him, and this colleague approached the target and raised his arm, and he was about to hit the target with a stick. Suddenly we saw a double-edged sword of fire descended from the sky and cutting the hand of my colleague. We were scattered, everyone ran in his direction. The Bible says the Lord will give you victory over your enemies who will come against you. They will come out against one way and they will flee before you by 7 ways. The Princess Magdalene was watching this operation and defeat since the marine civilization in a giant screen in his garden, and when we entered the world of mermaids to give the report, I was extremely angry. I remember there was a woman who was a witch. She was divorced by her husband because of his witchcraft, so she decided to destroy her former husband, but she was unable to do it. But the first group of human spirit that had to execute this operation had failed to kill this man because he was a disciple of Jesus. The man was invisible in the surveillance system and instruments of the satanic world, but when he came to his place we could see this man in our monitoring instruments. It must be said that this man was a retrograde Christian. He had 1 foot in and 1 foot out. To kill this man, one of my colleagues had decided to enter his body. The man had the door of his life opened, and we were trained to project inside people's body when they fail to close the door of their life. We prayed for our colleague. Then he entered into the body of this man. The person had to be emotionally imbalanced for us to enter, like in a state of fear or panic or anger. When my colleague entered the body of this man, he began to influence his actions, and led this man's action. In fact, once a man is controlled, manipulated and influenced by a demon, he's going to have irrational attitude, but he will not be aware of this because his intelligence is manipulated. This man has ended up committing suicide after a dispute with his new wife. It was when he was about to die that my colleague went out of his body. At the moment my colleague that had bewitched him went out of his body, he realized what he did to himself, but it was too late. When an evil spirit influenced someone, the latter would not realize that. Only after the damage is done that he would. Afterwards, I was sent to Earth in a church with a mission of destruction. I had to execute this mission physically, so I went to Earth and I joined the church in question. In fact, I had adopted the identity of a businessman. The goddess had provided me a lot of money for this mission. Money is one of the weak points of pastor. With the money it was easy to buy the conscience of God's servant. Thus I became the financial partner of the church. The pastor ended up making me one of deacons of the church. Their spiritual eyes was closed. People died in this church, for it was a dead church. The Bible says where there is no vision, the people perish. Pact with Satan. I remember one day when the goddess of love sent us to Earth to capture a young boy. that was orphan. Actually, when his parents were alive, they signed a pact with dark power so as to acquire success and wealth, but under the terms and condition of this alliance their offspring was supposed to die in a very specific age. Over the years they have enriched themselves with the goods of this world, but their children were dying one by one in the predetermined age that was specified in the pact. When this couple became senior and they have aged, they noticed that they are enriched but that they had lost all the children becoming childless. They felt that this situation was tragic and it is risky to die without leaving any offspring to enjoy and benefit from their wealth after their death. Therefore they decided to have a child that they will not sacrifice. They were ready to go against the terms and conditions of the pact signed with the satanic world. They agreed not to sacrifice their sons as stipulated in the pact signed with Satan's world, for according to this pact all their descendants and the fruits of their bowels had to die in an age predetermined by this diabolical pact. This couple gave birth to a baby boy, and when the boy grew up and reached the predetermined age of death, he was supposed to die, but his parents refused to comply with the request of the evil world of Lucifer. In fact, there were procedures and rituals that this couple had to perform in order to deliver the boy to the devil. They were supposed to perform the ritual by which children had to get sick and then die without suspicion. Since they won't sacrifice their son, the hellish world of Satan warned them they would die unless they sacrificed the child. Despite the warning of evil spirits, this couple chose to die instead of their son. They felt that they were already old, so they have accepted the consequences that will ensure that their son will be able to benefit and enjoy their wealth. Not long after raping the pact of Satan, this boy's mother died. Some time after his funeral, the father of this youngster was declared dead. Right after their death, the extended family took over all the riches that this couple left the boy by force, accusing him of being the witch responsible for the death of her parent. They confiscated all the good and threw the boy in the street. This boy ended up going without shelter. On the other hand, when the father and mother of this boy died prematurely, they were taken to the kingdom of Satan as slaves to do forced labor, until they will reach the number of years that God had given them, and fall in the abode of the dead. From this dimension where they were captive, they saw how the extended family took control of their property and threw their boy in the street. When they saw their son in the street, they started hitting members of the extended family who seized of their property by force. As a result, there were deaths in the family. In the meantime, men of God have taken the responsibility of this boy that was in the street, and they provided him a place to sleep and they sent him to school. During this time his parents did the forced labor into the underwater world of Satan, where they were slaves. One day this couple that became slaves in Satan's world were summoned by legal authorities. Once they arrived, the authorities told them, "It is true that we had to interrupt your life on earth prematurely because you could not keep the terms and conditions of the alliance we have signed together. You violated the contract, but in truth we didn't need you here. It is your children that we were interested in, because they legally are ours according to the agreements that you signed. Since you signed the contract to give us all your children, we want to inform you that we are in the obligation to take your son who is on the earth, as stipulated by the pact you signed." Well, this couple tried to plead to the judges of the kingdom of Satan. They tried to form a legal defense and they pleaded for their son by putting forward arguments, according to which they agreed to die at the place of their son. But the judicial authorities of the submarine kingdom was adamant, for the pact signed by this couple was still in force, and was not cancelled. Therefore their son was to die on earth and become a servant spirit. Then a first team was sent to capture the boy and bring him to the world of Satan, but they failed miserably because this boy was in the hands of men of God. After this failure we were called to take charge of this mission. The goddess of love brought us together and she projected direct image of this young boy on a huge screen. We took time to study and to investigate his life. From direct images projected in the giant screen of the goddess of love, we could see that the boy was living in a church, but he seemed to be miserable because he often thought of his parents. Finally we traveled to the surface world. We had physically landed on the surface of the land, precisely in his neighborhoods. Actually we landed on the surface with 3 new jeeps and we took the appearance of businessmen. At this stage we were trained to function like demons. We were able to operate physically on the earth, understand that all men are not natural human beings, After landing in this neighborhood we walked towards the young boy who was within a perimeter of 200 meters. When we saw him we greeted him and we asked him about his father and mother. He began to cry before answering us. Then he tells us, my parents are already dead. We told him, we are friends of your father, we come from Europe to see you because he had helped us travel to Europe. After a friendly chat with this boy we gave him a lot of money, recommending him to no longer live in the church but to rent his own place. Our tactic consisted of removing him from the hand of men of God in the church, so as not to fail like the first team of human spirit who had failed in this mission. And instead of talking about all this to the pastors who took care of him, the boy who was already bewitched ran into town to rent a place of his own, failing to inform leaders that were taking care of him. I would like to point out that while we talked to this boy we had to place invisible barriers in a given perimeter, so that people would no longer pass in this place. Once a man reached this bar he tended to change the direction because this place was supposed to be isolated so we can run our operation without disturbance and interruption of the public. After handing this sum of money to this young boy, we returned to the world underwater. The young boy began to live a life of opulence away from the church and men of God, for we gave him big sums. You can ask me the question to know where did this sum of money come from. It's all illusion and trick. In reality when we came to Earth we were not even well dressed, we were in black short, but we disguised ourselves thanks to manipulation of optical eyes. The jeep that we had parked in the street of the church were just empty cans of sardines already used, that we took in a trash. We commanded them to be transformed. As a result they were seen by ordinary human as car, but in reality they were anything else. Here we are dealing with the manipulation of natural sense and illusion. Natural men's optical eyes perceived these cans of sardines as cars, through manipulation of optical eyes. Thus many cars in the street are coffins, cans and skeletons, but they are seen by the eyes of humans like car. Indeed the spirit world we operate with spoken words and statements. We command things to come in existence through speech. The day of this operation I declared that I would be dressed in black suits and it happened the way I said it. If only the Lord could open the spiritual eyes of his children they would see that I was bare chest and in black short not black suit, and instead of seeing jeep they will have seen cans of sardines already used, for the physical world is a world of illusion, because optical eyes of humans does not fully capture the totality of the realities of things. We must understand that around 90% of the items we use at the surface of the earth comes from the world of Lucifer. I told you that I learned information technology in the marine kingdom. Let me inform you that the greatest scientist in the submarine civilization is Lucifer. He is the one who is at the center of new technologies. Every moment he is figuring out how to entertain and distract mankind with new media and new technologies. He has invented devices like the computer, the phone and many advanced technology. Lucifer created the limousine that people call Hummer. He started by imagining and thinking this car, then he spoke the word and gave details and clarifications as he wanted. As a result the car appeared. Even houses in the submarine world of Lucifer are built by the word, by faith that we recognize that the world has been formed by the word of God. Many days has passed since we gave the boy this money, and he was enjoying life in the city abandoning his church and men of God. We were in the underwater world playing drafts, when we remembered the young boy that we gave money, and finally we decided to end the life of this young boy. When we landed on Earth we found the boy drinking and making parties with her friends. After drinking they started to drive. This time we landed on the Earth like invisible spirits, so he couldn't see us. It was while he was driving the car that he bought with our money that we seized the car in question, and we started to pull it. As a result he lost control of the car. He was trying to stop the car but it was not working. Him and his girlfriends were trying to get out of the car but they couldn't, because we have blocked doors and windows. Finally we hit the car on a wall and the young boy died. During his funeral people said he must have resorted to magic because he had become very rich overnight. When he was buried we went to the cemetery at night and we took him out of his coffin. He was amazed to see the three people who gave him money pretending to be the friends of his father. Then we took evil shape in front of this young man. We turn into monstrous creatures with long teeth. He could not understand what was happening before him, and so we took this young boy and transported him to the world of Satan underwater, and when we arrived in this kingdom this young boy saw his parents doing forced labor for they were slaves there. All this was like a movie. This boy was enlisted in Satan's army and become a serving spirit that had to undergo scientific and esoteric training before deployment to the earth. Like a demon he will work for Satan until he will reach the number of years affected for him by God. Once we succeeded in this operation there was a party and gifts for us on the part of the siren Jacqueline. The Bible said there will be more joy in the sky for a single sinner who repents. There is also a party in hell when a soul is lost. Let me tell you, there is always a feast in the satanic world for a Christian who is destroyed, then for a 1,000 unbeliever dead. As I told you, the world of Satan is filled with human spirit in the service of the satanic army. I just want to remind us that as Africans we were born in families who are in alliances through the application of customs and traditions, and unless these alliances ancestral and parental be broken we will be victims. We do not know the state of the spirit of our ancestors. Most of our problems come from our ancestors who were in idolatry and ceremonies and traditional practices. We must understand, if our parents have you visited charlatans and marabout, we will need deliverance. These people are servants of Satan. They make us enter into direct and indirect alliances with Satan's world. If you have ever visited the church having an occultist pastor, who laid his hand on your head, you need deliverance.